Awesome. All right, so let's dive in. So where we're picking up is we're in the chapter, The Family Afterward, which is exciting. And we're going to pick up the very bottom paragraph of page 123. And just really quickly, for those that weren't here last week, or, just for those that are new and joining us, so glad you're here, genuinely. I mean, I probably still would do a big book study, me sitting alone, doing it by myself, because it's fun. But it's way more fun with you guys. So I am glad you guys are all here. You can just imagine me as animated by myself. All right. But last week we're talking about the family afterward, and I was talking about how sometimes we can get tripped up over the titles or not really understand what the context of the chapter is. And what I want to point out, it says the family afterward. So after what? What we're talking about is how do we navigate the difficulties that there will be after the alcoholic has recovered as the result of the steps. Not after the alcoholic has come to AA or the addict has come to CA, but how can the family navigate the challenges and the struggles that there will be after the alcoholic has worked these 12 steps. So that's what we're talking about. And I want to contextualize it, especially because if I do well on time, no promises, I probably won't. But if I do well on time, we're going to talk about two directions in which the recovered alcoholic, or for our purposes, recovered addict, or whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study, two directions that they might take. And one of the directions is not good advice, especially if I have not recovered as the result of these steps. So I just really want to emphasize the family afterward, after the spiritual awakening. So bottom paragraph 123, glad you guys are all here. It says, now and then the family will be plagued by specters from the past. Specter is a really fancy word for ghost. It's probably not fancy, it's probably just antiquated, and antiquated is a fancy and also antiquated word to say old. You guys know I like using my weird languages. So it's what it's saying is now and then the family will be plagued by ghosts from the past. You know, those memories of some of the, it's going to say the shameful, tragic, humiliating experiences that not just I went through, but that I put my family through. So from the past, for the drinking career, and I will point out, only an alcoholic's going to make a career out of it. I did a full, you know what I mean? It wasn't just a 9 to 5. I mean, I was really climbing that corporate ladder of alcoholism, you know. I will say the benefits package was not good. It was pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I didn't get dental coverage either. You know what I'm saying? For the drinking career of almost every alcoholic has been marked by escapades. Funny, humiliating, shameful, or tragic. The first impulse will be to bury these skeletons in a dark closet and padlock the door. And if you guys remember, in step 5, it was talking about as an alcoholic or an addict, you know, I have these memories that I am just ashamed by. And what do I want to do? I want to stuff them deep down inside myself, hoping that they will never see the light of day. And that makes for constant fear and tension, and that leads to more drinking. So what I want to point out is that is a natural impulse to hide them, hide these memories, hide these stories, keep it to myself. And it goes on to say the family may be possessed by the idea that future happiness can be based only upon forgetfulness of the past. And maybe some of you guys have experienced this. When I know for me, there's been times I went to make amends to certain people, and it really is usually, in my experience, family members, when I go to try to make an amends, and they're not, it's not that they're angry. It's not that they're still holding the grudge. It's more that, oh, no, we don't need to talk. No, I've already forgiven you. Let's not talk. You know what I mean? That if you've ever made an amends or tried to make an amends, and that is like a human thing, and a very goodness gracious and understandable thing, right? And there are times where it's like, no, I don't want to look at my past. Or how often have we been working with somebody, or we're the somebody that was being worked with, and we're like, I don't want to dredge that up from the past and put that on my 4th step. You know what I mean? I'm afraid to look at this. I just want to move forward. Now, here's what it says. We think such a view is self-centered and in direct conflict with the new way of living. You're telling me I gotta go look inward, which is at this point we would have already done. We would have already done our inventory. But yeah, we get to look at our past, clean up our past, do our best to rectify the past, and that was what allows us to have a bright future. I cannot shove it in the closet, padlock the door, and pretend it's not there. And I want to point something out. Not only is it in direct conflict with these 12 steps, but it is with this new way of living. And I always, always, always want to emphasize, re-emphasize, smash home to anyone who's reading. Doesn't it just have to be the alcoholic readers? I'm making a joke based on a quote from a different part of the book. But it says, in direct conflict with the new way of living. This is a way of life. The 12 steps are how I live my life. The 12 steps are not things that I simply practice between prayers at a 60-minute meeting. Do you know what I mean? The 12 steps is not a set it and forget it program. The 12 steps is how I show up to work, to life, to family, to friends, to every area of our life, even driving. I don't drive, so it's easy for me to be like, hey, even on the highway, let's use these spiritual principles. You know what I'm saying? Oh, the broad highway. We got to be on the broad highway where we're on the like I-95 highway, you know, rock and roll. Sorry, I didn't plan that. It just happened. Alrighty. And now what we're diving into is honestly one of like my favorite parts of the book. Now, I will be transparent. I could say that about almost any part of the book. But page 124, I mean, it is just a beautiful description of what these 12 steps are and what these 12 steps do and the promise that is available for all of us. So it says Henry Ford, and history has proved that he's maybe not the greatest guy. So it does not matter who said it, but what matters is what was said. Once made a wise remark to the effect that experience is a thing of supreme value in life. To be of supreme value is to be of the most value, you know, the most important. What is the most important or has the most value in life? Experience. And I say this a lot because it's my experience, is that the 12 steps are experiential. The 12 steps are not an intellectual exercise. It's not about me sitting around memorizing stuff in the book, although I have done that, but not on purpose. You know, it's like doing big book studies and working with people. It'll stick in there. You don't got to memorize it. It'll happen. And you'll be like, why am I quoting the big book at random times? It just happens. But these 12 steps are experiential. And what do I have to share with people? I have to, welcome. Glad you guys are here. Sorry, it was absolute ADHD that I don't have. It's really weird that you guys think I have a problem with my level of attention. Gosh, right? All right, so that this is experiential. And what do I have to share? I have to share my experience and my strength and my hope. I have to share with you my experience with my alcoholism or my addiction or my compulsive behavior that brings me to this study. It does no good if I tell you what my theory of alcoholism is. Man, anyone ever been sober and at like a party and somebody's drunk and telling you their theory about alcoholism? I don't care about your theory, buddy. I care about experience. You know what I'm saying? And again, it's that same thing. If somebody's telling me their theory of how to work a 4-step, man, that doesn't help me. What helps me is show me how to work the 4-step. Show me how to take those actions. These 12 steps are experiential. And what we are after is to experience that power, which is God. And if you're here and you're like, the G word, what I'm here is I'm after a spiritual experience. I'm after an experience with a power. I'm after a transformation. That's what I'm after. And I cannot intellectualize that. I know because I tried. You know what I mean? I'm going to try to do it all up in here so I don't have to make any amends and talk to people and stuff. And I couldn't get there. It is experience. And it says this is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. See, my experience with alcoholism, my experience with addiction wasn't really useful while I was in my cups, as they say. I was not of use to other people when I was going on a bender. I was not of use to people when I was carpet surfing. My experience and my pain was not of use to others, but it becomes of use to others if I am willing to turn the past to good account, taking a bad account and turning it good. You know that idea, the accounts in the red, let's turn it into black, spiritual finances, I'm gonna turn this, and here's how. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. Man, this is the 12 steps. This is what we're doing. And so, how do I grow? It's by my willingness to face. I got to face these errors. Where do I begin to face the errors of my past? Well, I begin to face them in step 4. I face them in step 5. I begin to face them in step 6. And we talk about rectifying, 6 and 7, you could argue whether it's facing or rectifying, but 8 and 9, there is no doubt. I go out and I make my amends. That is rectifying the errors of my past. Step 10 allows me to face and rectify the errors of my near present. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? Yes. And Rob's got it in the chat. Rectify, to correct, to make, to set right. And that is how we grow. And also, I don't know about you, there are sometimes I have defects of character. I know, I'm the only one. In fact, I am riddled with them. But sometimes, and some of you guys are like, girl, we know you haven't been going too long at this thing, and we can tell. But I sometimes have this thing, I know it's just me, perfectionism. And I want to be perfect, and I want to be little Miss 12 Step. And what do I think? What do I think is I just need to show, I need a sash is what I need. Please don't, actually, I'm clearly not a sash human, a tiara, that's not my jam. I know some people are like, ooh, let's make her wear a tiara. No. But I want to show up as Little Miss Perfect. And I think Little Miss Perfect means I can never have a resentment. I can never have a fear. I can never have a defect. I can never have selfishness and self-centeredness. The irony is that is what we read as selfish and self-centered. That is what keeps me stuck, and that is what keeps me stagnant. I grow by my willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. If you are like me, some of you might be, there will be errors. There will be mistakes. There will be harms. I will have defects often, regularly, daily. You know what I'm saying? I will. And by facing them in my continued 10 and 11, right? And rectifying them, that allows me to grow. 10 and 11, like 10 is in the 10-step prowess, and 10-step practice. And when I talk about 11, I'm talking about the evening review practice specifically in this instance. Those are 4 through 9. Taken on a small level. I'm taking those same actions of 4 through 9. It is 4 through 9 and that continued practice that allows me to grow. And I am here for growth. I want you guys to know when I got here, I was not here for growth. I was like, stagnation is great. Could I just have my head a little bit above water? It doesn't even have to be all the way, just a little bit. But I want you to know nowadays I'm in the growth business. Part of why I'm in the growth business is because this stuff works. And I don't know about you, but when I found something that works, like alcohol, like drugs, you know what I mean? I want more of it. It's like here as an alcoholic or an addict, I tend to live my life by one rule. If it feels good, do it. Do all of it until I've burnt my life to the ground. And then I come to a place like this and I'm like, oh, I want to dip my toe into the steps. Oh, I don't want to take, I just really don't want to take, go too quickly. No, let's go hard. Let's go after it, dive in. And one of the things I always like to say is I could not stay well on one drink. I don't know about you guys. I couldn't stay well on one drink. I couldn't stay well on one pill. I couldn't stay well on one hoot. I can't stay well on one experience. And I need to be imperfect to continue to grow. This is not about perfection. This is about growth. And one of the most misquoted lines in our book, I don't know if it's the most, it's just something I noticed. And so I got a little, when you look for it, is we'll say it's progress, not perfection. It is spiritual. Yeah, it is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, because that is what matters. So often I confuse the gifts of recovery with recovery itself. You know what I'm saying? Got the car back, got the relationship back, got the job back, got, the family back, and those things are wonderful. But what I found out in step one is those things will not keep me sober. How am I progressing spiritually? And it's just like as if I were going to the gym. I cannot progress in my physical fitness if I do not have resistance, if I do not have weights to lift. You know what I'm saying? I cannot grow spiritually if I do not have errors to face and rectify. And don't worry, we don't got to go around and create them. They will happen. Just, we know they'll happen. All right. And it says, the alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset of the family, and frequently it is almost the only one. So this dark past, my dark past, the depth of my shame, the things that I said I would never tell another human being in my fifth step, you know what I mean? The things that I think make me the worst person that ever lived, that becomes the most valuable thing that myself and my family has. And I want to point out, it says thus. The thus is through this process of working these steps as a way of life. That is how we grow. And that is how the worst things that I have ever done become the most valuable and useful things that I have. I've shared this before, but my sponsor pointed out that my sponsees do not care when I do well. They don't. I mean, they're not mean to me, but me saying, hey, I showed up on time for both the big book studies that I was supposed to show up for. You know what I mean? I fulfilled my commitment, and I didn't swear, and you know what I mean? And I didn't, whatever. I did the thing I said. They don't care. But when I tell them how I messed up, when I tell them how I fall short, when I tell, you know what I mean? And how I made it right, man, even now, that is what seems to be useful. My regular failings, and not just because I have them, but because I continue to inventory, continue to do this work, continue to make right. So it says this painful past may be of infinite value. Infinite. There is no limit on the value that the worst things that I have done, the depth of my shame can help others. Man, this is why I'm just jazzed about this. This is powerful. Infinite value to other families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not. And what I want you to know is I owe the 12-step fellowships I belong to a debt. And here's what I will say. We do not have 12-step debt collectors. Although if we were in person and somebody wanted to be like, why are you in a wheelchair? I'll tell them I didn't repay the debt and I broke my kneecaps. I don't do that. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Just anywho, there's nobody. We do not have spiritual debt collector. Well, I guess actually, I'm thinking about it. We do. Alcoholism is the spiritual debt collector. Spiritual pain is the spiritual debt collector. Resentments, fear, selfishness, self-centeredness. But there's nobody running around with a crowbar trying to Tanya Harding anyone. You know what I'm saying? That is an old random figure skating reference. It's very obscure, and I'm surprised with how obscure that was. So yeah. Just got a reservoir of information, only some of it is useful. All of that to say, I owe 12-step a debt. And nobody's going to ask me to repay in the sense that nobody's going to break my kneecaps. But here's the thing. Here is what the debt looks like. A newcomer in need of help. A service commitment that I'm free and I can fulfill. Do you know what I mean? That alcoholic, that addict, or the person with the compulsive behavior that is struggling in the way that I'm struggling, and I can see that they need that guidance. They need somebody to take them through this work. Man, that's how I begin to repay the debt. And do you know what happens? Do you know what happens? I go to repay that debt and I just get further in debt. You know what I'm saying? I can't repay it. There's some spiritual interest on this bad boy that I can't get out of, because the more I try to repay this debt, the more I'm given and the more that I receive. That's what this thing is. The spiritual economics. I should do a talk one day on spiritual economics. I maybe shouldn't, because I don't know anything about actual economics and actual money. So, but don't worry. Somebody's managing my finances. It's God. Yeah. but truly, like the more I give, the more I receive, and that's the spiritual nature. And like, man, I talk about sometimes when we're writing inventory, oftentimes I'll come from this place of scarcity, that there is not enough. There's not enough love, not enough compassion, not enough empathy, not enough understanding. And when I am in self, that feels true. And when I'm in self, I need it from you. I need you to like me, to validate me. And if you give it to me, it's not enough. I need to keep chasing it. But you see, when I get it from God and then I give it to you, it is more than enough. It is abundant. And that's kind of what I mean by that spiritual economy, the economy of grace. Nothing gets wasted here. Nothing gets wasted. It all gets used. So when the occasion, we think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not, and relieved, what we're pointing to is recovered. Recovered does not mean cured, but relieved. That position of neutrality, safe and protected. And it says, when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too willing to bring out former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Grievous is no matter how shameful or dark, or you know what I mean? Ooh, girl, your alcoholic past is pretty grievous. We're talking about mine. I'm not talking about anyone else's. My grievous, not your grievous. All right. And and it really, it's like, oh, we are on page 124. I haven't gotten far. Just if you're wondering, if you're like, oh, where were we? Probably not far from where we left off. Just go on, little whoop-de-doops. That's how we do this thing. All right. So, and it says, showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Man, what a powerful experience. And I want to point something out. Showing others who suffer how we were given help. What does that mean? That means 12-stepping other people, taking them through this work. These 12 steps is a way of life. That is what makes life seem so worthwhile. I want to point out that is not codependently trying to put out their fires or drag them, you know what I mean? But offering this simple kit of spiritual tools. And I want you to know, if that has not been your experience yet, or you're sitting here and you're like, girl, you're telling me that taking a bunch of like selfish, self-centered drunks or drug addicts or compulsive overeaters or compulsive whatevers through the steps is going to be the thing that makes life seem so worthwhile? Are you out of your flippin' mind? This is what I mean by it is experiential. Because my best thinking is like, are you kidding me? But what's my experience? My experience is this is the best. I would not be doing this. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. What's my one rule? It feels good, do it. This produces results. You know what I'm saying? This works. And those of us who have begun to work with others, or who haven't begun, but who have been working with others and carrying this message and doing it in a way that is effective and efficient, man, you guys know in some of the drug fellowships like CA, they talk about the God dope. You know what I mean? That's the good stuff. And listen, I didn't have a lot of finances when I was in my active alcoholism or active addiction, so I wasn't drinking the top shelf stuff. But here in AA, CA, DAA, we can have top shelf recovery. I don't have to settle for the bottom shelf. I remember there was some bottom shelf alcohol that it was beer and it tasted like it had iron in it, which is probably not good. Yeah, some of you guys are like, that's alarming. Just seeing your faces go look, ooh. That was obviously not a long time. That was a long time ago. So whatever is it's fine. I've survived. We've made it through. But you know what I mean? Let's have top shelf. So it says, cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have. And I love doing, some of you guys know when I go out and do talks and share my experience, strength, and hope, I like doing it through a format called the Big Book Bounce Around. And I like bouncing around different themes and different parts of the book. And I have this whole talk that I've done where it's like on the theme of what my life looks like in my hands versus in God's hands. And on page 100, it talks about the things that come to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have imagined. And that theme of God's hands runs through this book. And I love that it is cling to the thought that in God's hands. So how do I get my dark past out of my hands and put it in God's hands? These 12 steps taken out of this book. That's how. That's how. It's like, really, it's that simple. And I love this. It's the greatest possession you have. The key to life and happiness for others. See, I can't fix people. I can't save people. I've tried. I'm not God. I'm also, I joke about that. If you guys remember the movie The Incredibles, like Edna Mode, the little lady that designed the suit, she would say, no capes. That's like a little thing for me, like no capes, because I want to put on the cape and be like, super sponsor, and I will save you. Here I am to save the day. You know what I mean? Like, no, I can't do that. I can't, but it is the most incredible thing to sit down with another human being who has suffered the way that I have suffered and to say, yes, me too. Yes, me too, I went through that. Yes, me too, I used like that. Yes, me too, I drank like that. Yes, me too, I crossed that line too. Yes, me too, I felt like that. Yes, me too, I experienced that. And here is how I get freedom from it. And to take them through this course of action and watch the light come on in their eyes. Man, that is what I was always looking for in the bottle, always looking for in a pipe. That is that light coming on. And it is the most incredible thing, not only to see that light come on, but to see their family begin to get well and to be just a small part of that miracle. Man, that is the stuff. And like, really, like, don't miss it. It's the good stuff. You know what I mean? That is the top shelf stuff. And if you've been around 12 step for a while, like, I hear you, Paige, but I haven't experienced that. What I want you to know is our responsibility is to help you experience that, not just so that you experience that, but help you experience that so that you can help others in the way that we have been helped. You know what I'm saying? We get to be a link in an incredible chain, a miraculous chain of events. All right. And it says, with it, you can avert death and misery for them. I don't have the power to make anyone drink. I don't have the power to make anyone relapse. I don't have the power to keep anyone sober. But like, this is life and death. And I joke around and I go on my little tangents, but I do take that seriously. You know what I'm saying? And a little bit of like historical information, which if I am wrong, Rob will tell me about. Often we talk about the big book being a group, like a group of authors. You know what I mean? It was primarily Bill Wilson across the Hudson River in New Jersey, dictating to Ruth Hawk, the secretary who was typing it out. He tried to get Akron, Ohio to like edit, like all the drunks in Akron to like edit it and give input, but there wasn't so much of that. But this is a point in the book where you can definitely tell there was some group conscience. There was some editing that came from some of the drunks. Like, you can just feel it, you can see it, you can vibe with it. You don't have to vibe with it, but I can see it. So we go from like the dark past is the most principal asset to being like, wait a minute. You can almost imagine like in your group business meeting, like somebody being like, hey, wait, actually, wait a minute, hold on, like just like that, like devil's advocate, you know what I mean? It's like, this next paragraph is that vibe to me. So it is possible to dig up past misdeeds so they become a blight, a veritable plague. Basically, that not good thing that we don't want to be anywhere near. You know what I'm saying? For example, we know of situations in which the alcoholic or his wife have had love affairs. In the first flush of spiritual experience, they forgave each other and drew closer together. The miracle of reconciliation was at hand. Now, throughout the book, it gives us directions on how to repair relationships, whether there was or was not infidelity. Then under one provocation or another, provocation could be anything from like, just our fights, or like could you throw your socks in the laundry hamper? Or I told you to do the dishes. That could be a provocation. Or it could be like, did you remind my mother to do, you know what I mean? Like that, you bring in the in-laws, there's some provocation there all over the place. We have been provoked. All right. So one provocation or another. The aggrieved, so the one who had been cheated on, would unearth the old affair, this thing that they believed was dead and buried. We've moved past it and digging it out of the earth and angrily cast its ashes about. A few of us have had these growing pains, and they hurt a great deal. Husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be rewon. And it does say in working with others that sometimes it is best for the couple to remain apart. For the alcoholic, the one who has to, our lives depends on working this program, right? To really get a firm foundation of all 12 steps before coming together. So in most cases, the alcoholics survive this ordeal without relapse, but not always. So we think unless some good and useful purpose is served, past occurrences should not be discussed. And then it goes on, and this is how you can kind of feel. It's a little bit like somebody's like, hey, wait a minute, my wife was throwing around the old affair, and like, hey, we should put in there the don't do that paragraph. Because then it goes, we families of alcoholics keep few skeletons in the closet. So it's a bit of a, you know what I mean? And just if anyone's, I like seeing some of the history and how it kind of like, ooh, and like when we get to employers, ooh, we are going to see it's got a bit of a different vibe because it's got a bit of a different author. And I love seeing some of that stuff. So we families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in the closet, so we don't have those secrets, right? Because we don't want to bury them in the past. We're open, we're transparent. I mean, obviously with discernment. Everyone knows about the other alcoholic's troubles. This is a condition which in ordinary life would produce untold grief. There might be scandalous gossip. That is the hot tea, not the lukewarm tea, the hot tea, the hot goss. Yeah. Laughter at the expense of other people, and a tendency to take advantage of intimate information. And here's where we're really given some direction on what to do about gossip other than don't. And I know no one here would ever gossip, ever. And that's never happened. Never. Absolutely not. But just for these hypothetical other people that definitely aren't us, these are some directions. So it says, among us, these are rare occurrences. We do talk about each other a great deal, but almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance, which is our code. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And one of the things that I want to point out before, because I can tell that Scott put something funny in the chat, and I'll read it in a little bit. See, I'm on it. I'll read it in a bit. I just got to finish this thought before I get on that thought, because, one thought at a time. But if we're dealing with that desire to talk about another person, or somebody's bringing the hot goss or the hot tea, and that, oh, girl, spill the tea, they're bringing us that information, and I don't want to gossip. How do we handle it? Well, I'll tell you how I temper it with the spirit of love and tolerance is if somebody's like, can you believe so-and-so did that? It's like, yeah, that sounds really painful. How do you think we could be helpful to them? Or I'll do things like, and by the way, you'll see that people have stopped bringing gossip to me because I'm not fun. I'm like, hey, yeah, I can understand that would be really frustrating. That would be really annoying. That sounds like a resentment. And I know for me, I've inventoried stuff like that. Do you guys want to take it through the columns? So you can tell that one of two things will happen is the conversation will either get to me looking at me and getting to the truth about what in me is disturbed, or they will stop bringing you the gossip. And somebody who doesn't get a lot of the hot goss. But I will get people who are willing to take inventory to me. See how I did that? It's effective. All right, so now I got to read what Scott put in the chat. Hold on. Scott says, when my wife and I argue, it's like a band playing on tour. We start with the same songs. We start with some songs from the new album and then pull out all the greatest hits. Oh, rock and roll. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's, by the way, I have been forgetting to mention this. If you have any questions, always throw them in the chat. I'll do my best to keep a loosey-goosey eye on the chat. So if you have questions or I'm going too fast, that I know I do, or anything like that, you put it in the chat. So back to back to page 125. So another principle that we observe is we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. So again, a really important and useful direction in regards to gossip. We find it better, when possible, to stick to our own stories. A man may criticize or laugh at himself, and it will affect others favorably, but criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. I am effective, and that's what I need to be. I need to be effective. And me being able to joke and poke fun and have not take myself too seriously is helpful. Criticizing other people, not helpful, I found. And I listen, I want to be very clear with you guys. This is not like how I am naturally. My natural sort of like little thought process is about how everyone's doing it wrong and I'm judging and I can't just wait to tell somebody about that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's who I am naturally on my own power. This whole like let's take it through the columns. That's not natural. That happened with work. And I'll share this story, and I might have shared it not that long ago at this big book study or another one. I kind of can't remember where I say things. So if you're like, girl, you keep repeating yourself, what are you in Scott's marriage and having the same old hits? I'm kidding. But it's just because I say it again. So what I will say is I struggled with judgment. I struggled with gossip. And what I did was I found that it is not helpful for me to go make an amends with gossip by saying, hey, I was talking a lot of stuff about you. That is not helpful. And I will say that as somebody who has received that type of amends. I was like, ooh, that's probably not the way to do that. So what I found was how I began to amend gossip was would begin to say honest, kind things to their face and behind their back. That's how I began to amend that gossip. And then it was a couple of years ago. I was, it was a couple of years ago. It was the 10-year anniversary of when I got sick, and that self-pity of my illness was like, it was just on me, and I could just feel it coming. And I'm like, man, I don't want to fall into that. And I go through another set of steps. I dive into this work because I continue, you know what I mean? I continue to do this stuff. And I was writing some inventory, and what my inventory was absolutely riddled with my judgment, my criticism, and all of that. And I was doing some kind of fun things with the inventory too. That was the one where I was doing loving kindness meditations for everyone on my resentments. I was doing, Ho'oponopono. I was doing some fun in addition to stuff, just trying to shake it up a little bit, And I was listening to a spiritual teacher that I really like is an audiobook, and in it, and she might have been quoting another book, but in it she said, you cannot say you love God if you do not love his children. And in that moment, I felt the judgment fall from me. I didn't do it. I didn't overcome the judgment. God did it for me. What my job is to do is to put myself in a position where God can work in my life. And that's what I did. And am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I have never fallen into that same level of judgment. I've got freedom from it. That is not mine. Anywho, so gossip. That's how I've amended it. Anywho, it says members of a family should watch such matters carefully. For one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. Especially in our families, we got those buttons. Say something about not putting the socks away and it just hits you. Make ones, breathe in a certain way, or your partner breathes in a certain way. You're like, oh, that's it. We're on. That, right? So we alcoholics are sensitive people. And I am here to ruin everyone's day. I'm so sorry. But I used to say that I was sensitive. And it was accurate. But when we talk about sensitive, we're not talking about, crying at dog food commercials or, you know what I mean? You remember they had those like Thailand insurance commercials that would just like, oh, we're not talking about like, seeing like lost puppies reunited with their owners and weeping. No. That's not the sensitive that we're talking about. the sensitive we were talking about, and my experience was I was like, oh, I'm sensitive. And then somebody ruined my day, so I'm going to ruin yours. And she said, Paige, it's not sensitive, it's self-centered. Oh, oh, because what am I doing when I'm sensitive? I'm taking something that's not about me and I'm making it about me. Oh, ruined my day. So it takes some of us, me, a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. So making things about me and taking things personal. Ugh, rude. Rude and accurate to call me out like that. So it says many, but I do need to outgrow it. I will point that out. Many alcoholics are enthusiasts. But they know rock and roll. And it says they run to extremes. What? Us as a people group? No. At the beginning of recovery. Now, I know it says the beginning, but I want to point out it does not take long to work these steps. And in those early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, they were not working a step a month, a step a year. You know what I mean? They were going hard, getting it done very, very quickly. So when we talk about at the beginning of recovery, it is not I'm showing up at some meetings, I should get a sponsor beginning of recovery. It is the beginning of practicing all 12 steps in my life as a way of life. Working in the 10, 11, 12 amends have been made, or most of my amends have been made, and I'm plugging away at the ones that are a bit harder to do and find, you know what I'm saying? That's the beginning, which kind of helps us see, like I talk about this a bit. My foundation cannot be step 1, 2, 3. I can't have a foundation on I'm going to relapse. There is a solution. I don't have it yet. And I'm going to decide to go get it. I got to have a foundation of the solution actively working in my life. That's my experience. And you can tell me that I'm wrong. And I will receive that reasonably well, because I am frequently wrong. I love that Rob's like enthusiast. And it puts in a definition as opposed to Paige, she's a little enthusiastic. See Paige, like in the dictionary picture, like, hey, anyway. So at the beginning of recovery, but again, all 12 steps after the spiritual awakening, a man will take as a rule one of two directions. So this is direction 1. He may either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet in business, so really focusing on work, focusing on the finances, or he may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of little else, diving into spirituality, diving into working with others, diving into these 12 steps. So it's one of two directions. It's going to be not even heavily implied which one is better. 2 is better. And it's going to tell us 2 is better. 2 all the way. 1, work. 2, spirituality. 2 is better. But I also, again, and it's not my opinion, although that is my opinion. It is reinforced by what it will say in the book. But also, again, this is not suggested pre-recovered, not suggested before the spiritual awakening, that diving into work. Anywho, it says, in either case, certain family problems will arise. There will be problems. With these, we've had experience galore. And I just love that word galore. We have a whole bunch of experience with it, but I need to use it more in my regular language, just galore. Good. It's good. Yeah. So some of you guys, go to work and like send it. Oh goodness, I've got emails galore, or don't just be normal at work. You do you. Don't take my work directions too seriously. So speaking of work and following work directions, let's do those. So this is the first, the first direction that we often go after we've recovered. Number 1, diving into work. So we think it's dangerous if he rushes headlong at his economic problem. So that's direction 1, which is work. And it's saying right off the bat, that is a dangerous track to take. And even post-spiritual awakening. So it starts with a warning. It says the family will be affected also, pleasantly at first, as they feel their money troubles are about to be solved. Then not so pleasantly as they find themselves neglected. Dad may be tired at night and preoccupied by day. He may take small interest in the children, so not really interested in the kids and helping raise them and take care of them, and may show irritation when reproved for his delinquencies. So being, hey, you haven't given a lot of time and attention to me or the home or the kids, and being like, get off my back. That like, oh, don't you see how hard I'm trying? Like, when we point out that shortcoming, that like, oh, getting defensive. And it says, if not irritable, he may seem dull and boring, not gay and affectionate as the family would like him to be. So just like, oh, just, exhausted, worn out, barely there, not full of life and excitement and enthusiasm and giving attention. Mother may complain of inattention. They are all disappointed and often let him feel it. Beginning with such complaints, a barrier arises. And throughout the book, it kind of, there's not necessarily throughout the book, but at least in step 9 and in the chapter 2 Wives, it talks about like, I've got to own my stuff. But when I point at others, that often creates those barriers. You know what I'm saying? So we're seeing that barrier rise. He is straining every nerve to make up for lost time. He's striving to recover fortune and reputation and feels he's doing very well. Don't you see how hard I'm working? And in this case, this person they're working really hard. And well, I mean, who hasn't gotten like a job, an early job in recovery and hyper focused on it and really put that as a priority? It's honestly, it's a human thing. And it says sometimes mother and children don't think so. They're not able to see how hard this person is working. And keep in mind, the alcoholic in this case is solely focused on work and work responsibilities, not giving time and care and affection to the rest of the family. So they don't think so. Having been neglected and misused in the past, they think Father owes them more than they are getting. They want him to make a fuss over them. They expect him to give them the nice times that they used to have before he drank so much, to show his contrition for what they suffered. That contrition, that remorse, that I feel bad. Yeah. We're rocking and rolling on the definitions today. Now, you always rock and roll on the definitions. What I'm saying is I am now rocking and rolling on this. I'm on your level. Rock and roll. Yeah. All right. So but Dad doesn't give freely of himself. Resentment grows. He becomes still less communicative, so beginning to isolate, not communicate. Silent treatment, building those walls, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes he explodes over a trifle, so having a big angry outburst over just a little thing. I know nobody here's ever done that. No one. Yeah, no one. And it says, the family is mystified. They criticize, pointing out how he is falling down on his spiritual program. This sort of thing can be avoided. So those are the genuine struggles that a family can and will have post-spiritual experience. And so these are the directions on how to move forward, how to move through this. It says this sort of thing can be avoided. Both father and family are mistaken, though each side may have some justification. It is of little use to argue and only makes the impasse worse. So arguing is not productive, which I know is radical information for somebody like me. I'm like, what? The family must realize that Dad, though marvelously improved, is still convalescing. And again, this is one of the few places in the book that it talks about recovering. So to convalescence or convalescing or to convalesce, that's recover. Healing, recovering from illness, recovering from injury, which again, if you have to call in sick for work, don't tell them that you're recovering from a cold. Tell them that you must convalesce as your symptoms are abounding galore. I don't know. That didn't make sense grammatically. I was trying to shoehorn them all in. It didn't work. But just tell them, listen, I'm convalescing. I can't make it in. Or don't. Please don't take my employment advice. Ooh, uh, not good. All right. So the directions for the family. They should be thankful he is sober and able to be of this world once more. Let them praise his progress. So pump those tires, encourage, support. Let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage that may take a long time to repair. If they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy. Now, that apathy is that, like, I don't want to do anything, which will disappear when there is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. And what I want to point out is two things. There will be periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy. So if you are on this spiritual journey and you're having those moments of crankiness or apathy, or you're feeling low, that is not abnormal. We are human beings. We get to live in the fourth dimension, but we are not exempt from the full range of human experiences. But what helps dissipate these periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy? Well, it is tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. Now, of course, these are directions for the family. But I will say, do not go to page 1, just like in Two Wives. Do not pick up this page and be like, excuse me, you need to be giving me tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding during my period of crankiness and apathy. Do not do that. That, like, again, not effective in navigating interpersonal relationships. Don't do that. But instead, the takeaway is when we sense in our loved ones, we sense in people that we care about, that they're experiencing periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy. What do I need to do? I need to show them and give them tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. And that will help dissipate it. And I always take the lens as, like, if I am reading this, the directions are for me. You know what I mean? And I'm sure anyone here who is actually in a relationship or married or long-term partnership or, like doing this deal, living with another human being, I'm sure that they might, alcoholic or not, addict or not, in recovery or not, they might have periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy. They just might. And what we can do is we can channel that tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. And I talk about channel because I can't do it on my own. Do you know what I mean? I can't just give love when I'm struggling. You know what I mean? What I got to do, and this is how I visualize it, I got to get me out of the way. Just get as much page out of the way, and God's love, God's tolerance, and God's spiritual understanding can flow through me. So why don't we leave it there? And next week, we will pick up the directions for us as the recovered members of the household when we are not giving our family love and care and attention, and what we need to be doing, because that seems like a semi-natural stopping point. So I'll stop the recording and we can all say the serenity prayer together because it matches what happens in my head. All righty.